At 30,000 feet above the sprawling, indifferent landscape of the Midwest, a woman whose net worth totaled $3 billion suddenly found herself fighting for air. 53 terrified passengers witnessed her sudden decline into unconsciousness. Their reactions spanned the spectrum of modern disconnect. Some gasped in stunned silence, others simply froze, immobilized by shock. Notably, a man seated comfortably in business class quickly produced his sleek iPhone, not to call for help, but to begin documenting the unfolding tragedy, his mind already crafting the perfect, viral caption for his imminent social media post. But back in the unforgiving confines of seat 37B, wedged uncomfortably between a decommissioned laboratory door and the relentless, piercing cries of an infant, a man wearing shoes held together with frayed duct tape rose to his feet. His hands, scarred and perpetually raw, were evidence of years spent scrubbing corporate toilet bowls during the graveyard shift. His 8-year-old daughter clung tightly to his side, securing a half-eaten granola bar, the entirety of their meager food supply since the previous morning. 2,000 miles distant, in a sterile Phoenix hospital room, his mother was in the final stages of dying. He had precisely 3 hours and 47 minutes remaining to arrive and deliver his final goodbye. In a swift, urgent span of 2 minutes and 53 seconds, this anonymous man saved the billionaire's life. And then, just as quickly, he vanished. No fanfare, no identification, no expectation of reward, no trace left behind. What Vivian Ashford eventually discovered about him, the truth of his existence and his quiet sacrifice, would fundamentally obliterate every rigid belief she held regarding professional success, personal worth, and the legion of invisible people she had unconsciously overlooked throughout her entire privileged, armored life. Vivian Ashford strode into the hushed sanctity of her 47th floor office before the city was even awake, a ritual she had maintained, without deviation, for 15 relentless years. The expanse of the Willis Tower stretched beneath the panoramic, floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago lay sprawling below her like a vast, glittering kingdom, a dominion she had constructed brick by excruciating brick, financed by maxed-out credit cards, and upheld by an absolute, visceral refusal to fail. Her Starbucks coffee was starkly black, unadulterated, precisely how she conducted her life. She had no tolerance for unnecessary complications, cream included. The Bloomberg terminal silently churned through the pre-market futures, while her copy of the Wall Street Journal lay open on the gleaming glass desk, precise yellow streaks of highlighter marking only the sections that held strategic significance. 19 days until the highly anticipated IPO. Ashford Medical Corporation was conservatively valued at $4.2 billion. Her phone vibrated. An intrusion. A brief, calculated text from Roland, her younger brother. The board is getting restless regarding Q3 projections. Some members are questioning leadership priorities. Lunch tomorrow? We should strategize, sis. She deleted the message instantly, without offering a reply. Roland had coveted her executive chair from the very day she founded the company. For 15 long years, he had patiently waited for her, his successful older sister, to make a catastrophic stumble. 15 years of meticulous observation, cold calculation, and careful positioning, waiting for the precise moment she betrayed any sign of weakness. Dr. Margot Castellaniano, 68 and silver-haired, materialized silently in the doorway. Margot was perhaps the only soul on the planet who addressed Vivian by her informal first name without prior permission or repercussion. Viv, Margot's voice was laced with clinical concern. You look like death warmed over. When was the last time you slept? Or consumed something that didn't exit a chrome vending machine? Vivian didn't look up from the terminal. Sleep is a luxury reserved for those who aren't 19 days away from the largest medical technology IPO in NASDAQ history, Margot. Margot crossed the room slowly, her gaze penetrating. Your mother, she stated simply, worked herself into an early grave. Heart attack at 51. Alone in her office at 2 in the morning. You were only 24. Do not force me to witness history repeat itself. Vivian remained silent, the memory a physical ache. Her mother had bequeathed her a single, brutal inheritance. A bone-deep, shivering terror of returning to poverty, coupled with an iron-willed, non-negotiable determination to never again be weak, never be dependent, and never be invisible. She had constructed metaphorical walls so impossibly high that no one could peer into the fragile interior. She had engineered armor so thick and impenetrable that absolutely nothing could wound her. She was not yet aware that such heavy armor could, with time, solidify into a terrible prison. 2,000 miles due west, Callum Renfield had been fighting exhaustion for 37 consecutive hours. His threadbare shoes were held together by strips of duct tape applied judiciously on the inside, concealed from judging eyes. The plane ticket clutched in his pocket, a budget $139 fare on Spirit Airlines, represented 3 months of relentlessly skipped lunches and painstaking, creative accounting required to keep the electricity turned on. Rosie walked silently beside him through the sterile, buzzing fluorescent corridors of O'Hare Airport. 8 years old, her brown hair constantly escaping the confines of a perpetually loose ponytail, she fiercely clutched a faded, Frozen-themed backpack. Inside was everything precious in her small world. A one-eyed teddy bear named Mr. Patches, which her mother had bought from a hospital gift shop the day before she died. A treasured, creased photograph of that mother in a wedding dress. A woman Rosie had heartbreakingly never met, and the precious remaining half of a Nature Valley granola bar, which Callum had smuggled out of the break room at the Amazon warehouse. "Daddy," Rosie whispered, her voice tired. "Why do airplane tickets cost so much money?" "Because they carry us to the people we love, Rosie girl," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. She pondered this for a long moment, the deep, heavy gravity that only 8-year-olds can muster etched onto her brow. "Then love must be really, really expensive. Is that why we don't have very much?" The innocent question sliced through Callum's chest like a scalpel. "We have plenty of love, sweetheart. We just don't have plenty of money. They're entirely different things. Ms. Hernandez says in America they're the exact same thing. She says that's why her sister can't afford her medicine." Callum had no ready answer for that devastating truth. Some realities were simply too crushing to confront in an airport terminal at 5 o'clock in the cold morning. His phone vibrated, the number for Phoenix General Hospital. "Mr. Renfield, this is Dr. Patterson. Your mother's condition deteriorated significantly overnight. If you wish to see her, you must come now. I am so sorry." Lorraine Renfield had raised him in isolation after his father abandoned them for a 23-year-old secretary when Callum was 6. Lorraine had worked grueling double shifts at Denny's for 19 years straight, ensuring he could complete nursing school without being crushed by predatory debt. Then, when his wife Karen died, when the inevitable medical bills reached an astronomical $847,000, Lorraine had sold her cherished old car and relocated to a scorching trailer park in Phoenix, just to help her son survive the financial wreckage. Now, she was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he had exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes left to say his final farewell. The plane ascended swiftly from Chicago O'Hare, carrying its disparate cargo of separate lives toward entirely separate destinies. In first class, Vivian meticulously reviewed complex IPO documents on a custom laptop that cost significantly more than Callum earned in 2 months of backbreaking labor. In row 37, Rosie, exhausted from the 4 a.m. wake-up call, finally drifted off to sleep against her father's rigid shoulder. Mr. Patches clutched tight to her small chest. 35 minutes into the flight, Vivian reached instinctively for her chilled water glass. Her throat suddenly seized. It was a bizarre, terrifying sensation. The shrimp, the catered gourmet lunch her assistant had ordered. A strange tingling sensation began creeping across her lips. Then her chest constricted violently. It felt as if thick, crushing steel bands were wrapping inexorably around her ribs. She attempted to draw a breath and couldn't. The pristine cabin erupted into deafening chaos. Someone screamed hysterically. Flight attendants converged, their faces stark white with professional panic, realizing they were out of their depth. The man in 3C immediately pulled out his iPhone and commenced filming, his focus locked on the perfect angle. No one, absolutely no one, moved to physically help her. Vivian's peripheral vision grayed, closing in like a shroud. She was dying at 30,000 feet, immobilized and surrounded by dozens of strangers, utterly alone despite the massive crowd. All that accumulated money, all that immense power, all those years spent meticulously constructing an empire, all proved completely and utterly useless in the face of a simple, swift allergic reaction. Then, hands contacted her face. They were surprisingly gentle, yet rough, calloused, moving with an innate, practiced precision. Someone tilted her head back expertly. Fingers, expert, familiar fingers, located her carotid pulse with the undeniable certainty of long, deep experience. "Ma'am, I'm a nurse. Stay with me. You're going to be okay." Through the rapidly thinning gray fog, a face gradually materialized. It was not a polished face, not an expensive face, just a man. He looked profoundly exhausted, worried, and undeniably kind. His deep brown eyes held hers like powerful anchors in a violent storm. Behind him, a small, worried face watched. A little girl with perpetually tangled brown hair clutching a one-eyed teddy bear, observing the scene with solemn terror. "Daddy, is the lady going to die?" "No, baby. She's going to be just fine." He spoke the words like an absolute promise, as though he possessed any control over the harsh reality of death. And somehow, against all logic, Vivian believed him implicitly. Callum's hands remembered everything instantly. 8 years had passed since he left the clinical environment. 8 years spent scrubbing institutional toilets and stacking heavy boxes in dimly lit warehouses. But true muscle memory does not forget the critical steps. Airway clear, pulse weak and thready, lips cyanotic, classic anaphylaxis, severe and progressing terrifyingly fast. "She's in anaphylactic shock. I need the emergency medical kit now. Does anyone have an EpiPen?" The flight attendant scrambled frantically. Callum rapidly assessed the situation, calculated the risk, and prepared the equipment. The medical kit arrived. He seized the EpiPen, verified the pediatric dosage, and expertly positioned it against her lateral thigh. He pressed the injector firmly. "Hold for 10 seconds. Breathe with me now. In and out, slow and steady. You're doing great." Color instantly flooded back into Vivian's ashen face. The fictional steel bands strangling her chest loosened their grip. She gasped, coughed violently, and then breathed. A true, ragged breath. A massive wave of spontaneous applause erupted throughout the entire cabin. A flight attendant placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Sir, you saved her life. Can we please get your name for our records? The airline will want to recognize." Callum checked his cheap watch. His face, already pale, drained of all remaining color. "Monitor her closely. Second dose in 15 to 20 minutes if symptoms recur. Have paramedics waiting at the gate." He stood up, retrieving Rosie's small hand. "Sir, your name." But he was already moving swiftly back down the narrow aisle, back toward the invisibility of row 37, back toward the life he desperately needed to escape. Vivian struggled weakly to lift her heavy head. Through the residual chaos, she caught a fleeting glimpse. A faded jacket, worn, duct-taped shoes, and a small child's hand tightly clasped in a larger, rougher one. Then, nothing. He had dissolved into the stream of relieved passengers, as if he had never materialized at all. Callum made it to Phoenix General Hospital with precisely 11 minutes to spare before the end. Lorraine's eyes fluttered open one final time when she recognized his voice. She reached weakly for his hand, the same rough, practiced hand that had minutes earlier snatched a complete stranger back from the threshold of death. Her lips moved, forming words with the last vestiges of her strength. "Don't be afraid to live again, Callum. Promise me. You've been hiding for 8 years. Karen wouldn't want that. Rosie needs you to be whole, not just surviving. Find something. Find someone. Let yourself be seen. I promise, Mom." She smiled gently, closed her eyes, and quietly slipped away. 2,000 miles east, Vivian Ashford lay recovering in an opulent private hospital suite at Northwestern Memorial. Machines softly confirmed her ongoing survival. She was haunted by one persistent question she could not possibly answer. Who saves a stranger's life? A life measured in billions, and then asks for absolutely nothing in return? The investigation commenced the following morning. Vivian hired Declan Thorne, a former agent from the FBI's Chicago field office. At a retainer of $500 an hour, she was utterly indifferent to the staggering cost. She simply needed to understand. Your mystery man is a ghost, Thorne reported 2 weeks later, sliding a preliminary file across the heavy mahogany desk. 84 passengers on that flight. Dozens of men traveling with children. But this guy, it's like he's practiced being invisible. Security cameras never catch his face clearly. Practiced, Vivian echoed, staring out at the city. Some people, Thorne continued, his voice neutral, learn not to be seen. Usually means they've spent a very long time being overlooked. The breakthrough materialized from cross-referencing recent emergency room admissions near Phoenix. Terminal cancer patient Lorraine Renfield, 67, died the exact same day as the flight incident. Next of kin listed, Callum James Renfield, son. Thorne presented the complete, devastating dossier. Callum James Renfield, 38 years old. Former registered nurse. License still active, but unemployed in healthcare since 2016. Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Rush University. Student debt settled through a contentious bankruptcy agreement. Current employment. Night custodian at Willis Tower. $75 an hour, 0 benefits. Warehouse associate at Amazon. $50 an hour, repeatedly classified as seasonal for 14 months straight. Weekend handyman, cash basis, whatever jobs he can find on Craigslist. Previous employment. Northwestern Memorial Hospital ICU, 2009 to 2016. Exemplary performance reviews across all 7 years. Resigned citing personal reasons. Spouse, Karen Bellamy Renfield. Deceased December 2016. Cause of death. Postpartum hemorrhage, complications during childbirth. Medical debt incurred. $847,312. Daughter, Rosie Mae Renfield, age 8. Enrolled in the free lunch program at Shields Elementary. Income qualified. Current bank balance, $247. Eviction notice filed October 15th. Vivian stared, unblinking at the bottom line. $247. The man who had effortlessly saved her $3 billion life possessed a personal net worth of $247. There's more, Thorne said quietly, reading her expression. His mother's funeral was 6 days ago. Small, anonymous service. Almost no one attended. He looked broken, Ms. Ashford. Like a man who had finally stopped fighting. She finally located him in the sun-baked, asphalt parking lot of Phoenix General Hospital, 8 days following his mother's death. He stood beside a brutally ancient Honda Civic, 251,000 miles registered on the odometer, staring blankly at the door handle, as if he'd forgotten the physical mechanism of opening it. 73 consecutive hours without sleep had hollowed him out. He was operating on nothing but ingrained habit and the primal, desperate need to keep moving forward. He heard the sharp, expensive click of her footsteps on the hot asphalt and turned. Everything about her existence screamed excessive wealth. The silk Hermes scarf, the Louboutin heels, the designer sunglasses that were undoubtedly worth more than his entire car. He almost didn't recognize the polished, untouchable woman from the airplane. Then he did. "I've been looking for you." His laugh was a harsh, bitter scraping sound deep in his throat. "You shouldn't have bothered. You saved my life." Anyone would have done the same, he dismissed, turning away. But they didn't. She stepped closer, the expensive perfume clashing with the dry desert air. 53 people watched me die. One man filmed it for TikTok. You were the only one who moved. A profound silence stretched between them, broken only by the Arizona wind carrying fine red dust across the lot. "I had somewhere to be," he finally managed. "My mother was dying." Past tense. She heard the finality of it. "I know. I'm sorry. I found the funeral notice. I should have come." He shook his head decisively. "I don't want thanks. I don't want sympathy. I don't want anything from you. I just want to get through today. Then tomorrow. That's the entire goal." She noticed the folded, official corner of the eviction paper protruding from his jacket pocket. "Let me help you." His face hardened instantly, the exhaustion replaced by cold rage. I don't need charity. This isn't. Then what is it? His voice surged, something long suppressed finally breaking free. Guilt money? Do you feel terrible that the guy who saved your billion-dollar existence can't make rent? That my daughter qualifies for free lunch because I work 3 jobs and still can't break the poverty level? He took a dangerous step closer, 8 years of suppressed, burning frustration finding a sudden, explosive outlet. I was a nurse, Miss Ashford. A good one. 8 years in the ICU. I saved hundreds of lives. And my wife bled out on a delivery table because some insurance algorithm needed 47 minutes to authorize a procedure that should have happened instantly. His voice cracked, strained by the memory. The system you're a part of, the system that made you a billionaire, it killed my wife, bankrupted my family, stole my career, and now it's coming to take the only home my daughter has ever known. Vivian remained motionless for a long, heavy moment. Then, she did the one thing she had never, in 42 years of clawing her way to the top, done before. She lowered herself slowly onto the hot concrete curb, her $2,200 designer dress instantly collecting the grimy Arizona dust. You're right. He stared at her, utterly taken aback. You're right about everything, she repeated, looking at the cracks in the curb. I run a medical technology company. We build sophisticated diagnostic systems, cutting-edge imaging tools, equipment that helps hospitals work faster. But the actual system that uses those tools. She looked up at him, and for the first time, Callum witnessed a deep, genuine fissure in her protective armor. It's broken. It's been broken my entire career, and I've done absolutely nothing to fix it because fixing it doesn't favorably impact quarterly earnings. She removed her oversized sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, heavy with exhaustion, and stained with something that looked undeniably like shame. I nearly died on that plane, and the only human being who helped me was someone the system had completely failed. Someone who was utterly invisible to everyone sitting in first class. Callum sat down beside her, the distance between them symbolic. Not close, but no longer miles apart. What exactly do you want from me? My foundation runs a healthcare reentry program. It provides full scholarships for nurses who were forced to leave the field, housing assistance, subsidized child care support, complete tuition coverage, and guaranteed job placement. In exchange for what? 3 years of service working specifically in medically underserved communities. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to apply. Because your license is still active. Because you saved my life with skills you haven't utilized in 8 years. And that means something profound. She paused, choosing her next words with unusual care. Because I need to believe that what I've spent my life building actually matters beyond the profit margin. Callum was silent for an age, absorbing the weight of the proposal. Then he recalled the words. My mother's last words. She made me promise not to be afraid. Afraid of what? He looked at this woman from a world he had never dared to touch, sitting in the baking dirt with him as if it were the most natural position in the world. Living. She said, I've been hiding for 8 years. She said Karen wouldn't want that. Said Rosie needs me whole, not just surviving. Was she right? She was always right, even when I didn't want her to be. He picked up a smooth pebble, turning it over and over in his rough, calloused fingers. This program is work, Miss Ashford, not charity. Every penny is earned. Every certification must be passed. Every patient must be served successfully. You prove yourself or you're out. And Rosie? Foundation housing in a safe neighborhood. After-school program covered. Health care for both of you, real comprehensive health care. He thought of the eviction sheriff arriving in 39 hours. He thought of his mother's voice. Don't be afraid. He extended his hand. Okay. Vivian took it. The connection between their hands was startlingly electric, unexpected, and terrifyingly consequential for both of them. Okay. Roland Ashford learned about his sister's new, profoundly suspicious project within the week. He sat rigid in his corner office, his bespoke suit flawlessly pressed, reviewing the damning reports his private investigator had quickly compiled. The former janitor, the large scholarship disbursement, Vivian's luxury car photographed outside a humble Southside apartment building at 11:43 p.m. Perfect. At the very next board meeting, he planted the first insidious seeds of doubt. My sister's recent behavior genuinely concerns me. Significant foundation resources were diverted merely to locate a single economy passenger. Now, she is personally sponsoring a custodian who voluntarily abandoned his demanding medical career 8 years ago. Margot Castellaniano intervened, cutting him short. Vivian's judgment built this company from nothing, Roland. Roland offered a tight, unsettling smile that never reached his eyes. Loyalty is undeniably admirable, Margot, but loyalty and fiduciary responsibility aren't always aligned. Are they? He could certainly wait. He had been waiting for 15 long years. A few more months meant absolutely nothing in the scheme of things. When Vivian's desperate charity case inevitably imploded, he would be perfectly ready to seize control. The slow, agonizing process of transformation began immediately. Callum attended intense classes during the day, advanced pharmacology, rigorous cardiac life support, and complex trauma protocols. He studied relentlessly until 2 in the morning, the accumulating coffee cups serving as exhausted monuments to his sheer determination. His textbooks bristled with sticky notes, coded in 3 different highlighter colors. The foundation apartment was small but pristine, located on a tree-lined street in Humboldt Park where neighbors actually exchanged genuine waves. Rosie had her own room for the first time since the crushing bankruptcy. She promptly covered the walls with vibrant butterfly stickers and lovingly placed Mr. Patch's and her mother's fading photograph on the nightstand. That first night, Callum stood in her doorway, watching her sleep peacefully in a real bed instead of a floor mattress, and he finally allowed himself to weep until there was nothing left but raw depletion. His hands, once again, remembered everything. The first time back in surgical scrubs, the cotton fabric felt simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar. The first time holding a stethoscope, hearing a patient's steady heartbeat through the earpieces without immediately flashing back to Karen's terrified face. Vivian appeared occasionally, maintaining a careful professional distance. But she started bringing him strong coffee when he pulled late-night study sessions. She even helped Rosie with complicated fractions homework when Callum was obligated to attend clinical rotations. Neither of them discussed the fragile, unspoken connection growing quietly between them. Neither was yet ready to face it. For months into the program, Vivian found him sitting alone in the foundation cafeteria at 3:17 in the morning. He sat hunched over, head buried in his hands, the massive pharmacology textbook open to a chapter he had read 9 fruitless times. The final qualifying exam was in 6 hours. Can't sleep either, apparently. He looked up. She was wearing faded jeans and a Yale sweatshirt. No makeup, no sharp corporate armor. She looked more profoundly human than he had ever seen her. Can't remember the difference between metoprolol and carvedilol. 8 years is a chasm. She slid into the chair opposite him. Tell me about her. About who? Your wife, Karen. Tell me about her. He was quiet for so long, watching the steam rise from his forgotten coffee, that she genuinely thought she had overstepped a boundary. Then, the dam broke, 8 years of silent grief finally pouring out. She taught kindergarten special education. Kids with learning differences, behavioral challenges. The kids nobody else had the patience for. She'd come home covered in sticky finger paint and glitter, smelling like Play-Doh, telling me about some 5-year-old who managed to string his first full sentence together, or tied his shoes without any help. His voice caught painfully. She got pregnant with Rosie. Easy pregnancy, 0 complications. Then the delivery. Everything went wrong all at once. Placental abruption, massive hemorrhage. I was right there. I was a trained nurse. I knew exactly what was happening. He stared down at the table, unable to meet her gaze. But I wasn't her doctor. I was her husband. I had to stand there and watch while they waited for authorization. Vivian reached across the cold table and covered his hand with hers. A raw, protective gesture. The authorization felt like it took forever. Every single second, I watched her slip further away, knowing the diagnosis, powerless to intervene. By the time they finally approved the emergency surgery, it was far too late. She looked at me, blood everywhere, monitors screaming their warning, and she whispered, "Take care of our Rosie, Cal. Promise me." Then her hand went limp in mine, and she was gone. That's why you left nursing. Every single patient became her. Every code blue. I heard those monitors screaming in the delivery room. I couldn't function, so I ran. I took jobs where I couldn't fail anyone, where nobody depended on me to keep them alive. But you saved me. He met her eyes, a shadow of the old nurse skill flashing there. You weren't a patient. You were just a person who needed help. My body moved before my brain had a chance to stop it. Maybe that's who you really are, she said softly. Someone who moves when everyone else freezes. Rosie understood complex truths that adults often missed or willfully ignored. She found Vivian alone on the foundation playground one late afternoon, swinging half-heartedly on equipment clearly designed for children a quarter her age. "Do you know how to swing properly? Daddy says grown-ups forget." Vivian tried, genuinely, to remember the last time she had sat on a swing. 35 years, minimally. Rosie demonstrated the correct pumping technique. Vivian attempted it, wobbled, and nearly fell off. Rosie erupted in laughter, a joyful sound like distant wind chimes. Then she became intensely serious. "Miss Vivian, can I ask you something really important?" "Anything, Rosie girl." "Do you like my daddy? Like him?" Vivian's meticulously guarded heart stopped dead in her chest. "Because he talks about you constantly. He says you're incredibly brave and smart, and that you possess a rare gift, seeing people that everyone else overlooks. He told me you saw him when the rest of the world looked right through him, treating him like a pane of glass instead of a human being." "Your daddy actually said that?" Rosie gave a solemn nod. "I really think you'd be a perfect girlfriend for him, but only if you promise you won't leave. Because Mommy left, and then Grandma Lorraine left, and I just can't bear for Daddy to be sad again." Vivian, profoundly moved, lowered herself, kneeling on the expensive rug until she was at the little girl's eye level. "Rosie, I would never, ever hurt your daddy on purpose. Not a chance in the world." Rosie's eyes, hauntingly similar to the vibrant ones Vivian had seen in the photographs of Karen, searched Vivian's face with an unnerving, adult intensity. "That's exactly what Mommy said, too. But she still went away. Your mommy didn't choose to leave, sweetheart. She desperately wanted to stay, more than anything in the world." "How do you know that?" "Because any mother who was lucky enough to have you would never willingly want to go." Rosie pondered this immense statement, her brow furrowed. Then, without warning, she threw her small arms around Vivian's neck, hugging her tightly. "Okay, I believe you. But listen, if you make Daddy cry, I will be really, really mad at you." A sudden, unexpected warmth flooded Vivian's chest. Something deep within her, a mechanism she hadn't even realized was locked shut, finally sprung open. "Deal." Roland chose the Foundation's annual gala, the high-water mark of the philanthropic social calendar, to execute his meticulously planned ambush. 500 of Chicago's wealthiest and most influential guests filled the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons. Major donors, prickly board members, opportunistic politicians, and the inevitable press corps, all buzzing beneath chandeliers that dripped crystal light. Vivian was breathtaking in a navy Valentino gown, a perfect vision of power and composure. Callum wore his first real suit since Karen's funeral, expertly tailored by a craftsman Vivian had quietly employed, deliberately shielding him from the shocking cost. Rosie stayed home with Mrs. Delgado. Too many fancy people. Callum had excused it. But the truth was, he wanted to shield her from the sharp, judging edges of Vivian's world. Midway through the meticulously organized evening, Roland took the stage. His voice, perfectly modulated, carried across the vast ballroom with a practiced, sickening veneer of public concern. "Before we continue celebrating tonight, I must address some disturbing concerns regarding the Foundation's operational integrity that necessitate public disclosure." The immense LED screen behind him instantly illuminated. It flashed through a rapid, curated sequence of photographs. Callum and Vivian sharing coffee in the Foundation cafeteria, walking together toward his modest apartment building. her sleek car conspicuously parked outside his address at 11:43 p.m. "We have here a former custodian," Roland stated, his tone dripping with implied failure. "A man who abandoned his nursing career for 8 long years. He has been fast-tracked through our rigorous program while demonstrably more qualified candidates are left waiting. He has been granted housing, tuition, high-end childcare, and benefits totaling well over $175,000. All while my sister personally supervises his progress." A collective gasp rippled sharply through the impeccably dressed crowd. Expensive phones rose like morbid flowers turning toward the spotlight. "Now, I am certainly not suggesting anything improper," Roland insisted, his eyes scanning the room, enjoying the discomfort. "I am simply asking, is this an appropriate use of sacred donor funds? Or has our CEO, Vivian Ashford, confused necessary philanthropy with highly questionable personal interest?" Callum felt the sudden, crushing weight of 500 pairs of eyes turning toward him. They were wealthy, polished, and immediately judging. This was the precise fear he had carried all along. That he didn't belong, that he was merely a charity case, that he was destined to be nothing more than the invisible man from the cheap seats. Now, in this opulent room, his deepest insecurities were publicly confirmed before an audience composed entirely of people who had never worked 3 jobs in their lives. He stood up straight, began walking toward the exit. He didn't run, he was far too proud for that. But every single, painful step cost him a piece of his soul. "Callum!" Vivian's voice was a desperate cry swallowed by the hall. He didn't stop. He sat in the oppressive darkness of his small apartment, the heavy platinum of his wedding ring still hanging on the chain around his neck, feeling like a painful anchor. He had been absolutely right all along. He didn't belong in her world. Never had, never would. The door creaked open tentatively. Small, soft footsteps padded across the floor. "Daddy?" Mrs. Delgado said, "You came home really early. Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Just thinking, Rosie girl. Go back to bed, sweetheart." She ignored the command and sat next to him on the worn couch instead, her presence a small, steady light. "You're sad. I can tell. Is it because of the mean man at the fancy party?" "What mean man?" Ms. Vivian called. "She said a mean man said terrible things about you in front of everyone. But she said he's a big liar and she's going to fix everything." "She called?" Rosie nodded decisively. "She said to tell you something very important. She said, 'The invisible man was never invisible to me. Tell him I see him. Tell him I have always seen him. And tell him I'm not going anywhere.'" Hearing those words, something deep in Callum's chest, a defense mechanism that had been frozen solid for 8 brutal years, cracked, splintering into pieces. Rosie, sensing the shift, curled securely against his side. "I see you too, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the whole world, even when you're sad." The emergency board meeting was convened precisely at 9 the next morning. Roland sat confidently at the head of the immense mahogany table, his posture radiating a smug, premature sense of victory. The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Margot Castigliano, a longtime Vivian ally, openly radiated quiet fury. Vivian entered the room, calm, impeccably composed, and utterly dangerous. "The board has serious concerns about recent events," Roland began, attempting to sound grave. "The board has concerns, Roland." She cut him off with the precision of a scalpel, her voice dangerously level. "Or you have concerns." She placed a thick, bound folder, its edges crisp and unnerving, squarely on the center of the conference table. "Since we are committed to transparency, allow me to share some recent internal findings." She proceeded to dissect him, 3 years of painstaking forensic accounting. Shell corporations registered deep in the Cayman Islands. Wire transfers funneled into accounts registered exclusively in his name. $4.7 million embezzled from both the corporation and the foundation since the start of 2021. Roland's face instantly drained of all color, turning a sickly, mottled white. "The SEC has been investigating for 18 months, Vivian continued, ignoring his visible collapse. "I have been quietly cooperating, building the case, waiting to see exactly how far you would push this. Now I know." She turned, shifting her focus to the stunned board members. My brother has been systematically stealing from this company for 3 years. When simple theft wasn't enough to force me out, he manufactured a public scandal. He weaponized a good man's poverty and my sincere attempt to help him against me. She looked directly at Roland one last time. Callum Renfield's scholarship is thoroughly documented, completely transparent, and was awarded through standard verified foundation processes. Furthermore, his test scores placed him in the 97th percentile of all program participants. He has already saved 3 patients' lives during his clinical rotations. Security entered the room, 2 agents in dark, non-negotiable suits moving with silent speed. But your embezzlement, Roland, Vivian concluded, her voice now cold steel. That is documented too. Bank records, wire transfers, offshore accounts. The FBI has everything. Goodbye, Roland. He was silently escorted out. The room fell into a heavy, echoing silence. Vivian addressed the remaining board members, her posture unwavering. If anyone else harbors concerns about my judgment or my priorities, speak now. Because here is what I know. 8 months ago, I nearly died on a plane. A man who works 3 jobs and couldn't afford health insurance saved my life. He asked for nothing. He expected nothing. He vanished before anyone could even thank him. She paused, letting the magnitude of her statement sink in. That man taught me something I had utterly forgotten while building this empire. He taught me that worth isn't measured in volatile stock prices or quarterly earnings reports. It is measured in what you choose to do when no one is watching, in whether you choose to help someone who has nothing tangible to offer you in return. If this board truly believes that supporting people like Callum Renfield constitutes an inappropriate use of foundation resources, then you can have my resignation, effective immediately. Because I would rather lose this chair than lose the first person who ever saw me as something other than a balance sheet. Margot Castigliano offered a small, fierce smile. I move we table all further discussion of the CEO's personal relationships and refocus our attention on the criminal referral for Roland Ashford. Do I have a second? The vote was unanimously in Vivian's favor. Callum was waiting in the foundation lobby when Vivian emerged from the elevator 3 hours later. She looked exhausted, triumphant, and utterly terrified all at once. Roland's been arrested, she managed to say. The board voted unanimously to support me. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides and pulled her fiercely into his arms. She stiffened for a moment, decades of emotional armor instinctively resisting the unfamiliar, overwhelming sensation of being safely held. Then, her resistance crumbled, and she softened against him, her face pressed into his shoulder, her body shaking with the long, silent sobs she had been holding back for hours. I thought I lost you, she whispered, her voice muffled. When you walked out of that ballroom, I truly believed you were gone forever. I almost was, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. Rosie talked me off the ledge. She delivered your message perfectly. Vivian pulled back just enough to wipe her wet eyes. I meant every single word. I know. He touched her face gently, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The invisible man sees you too, Vivian. He's always seen the real you. She laughed, a ragged, tearful sound. We're quite a pair, aren't we? A billionaire who never learned how to accept love, and a nurse who forgot he deserved to be loved. Maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe we can. They stood there in the immense, empty lobby, 2 profoundly broken people finally holding each other up. They were finally ready to stop running from the terrifying, magnificent thing they both wanted most. 1 year after Flight 1847, Callum stood in crisp new scrubs, his official ID badge reading, Callum Renfield, RN, clipped securely to his chest. It was his first day back as a certified nurse in 8 long years. Vivian found him just before his shift began. Nervous? Terrified? Good. That means you care. Rosie burst through the automatic doors, her backpack bouncing wildly. Daddy! Miss Vivian! Look what I made! She held up a drawing rendered in crayon. It showed 3 simple stick figures holding hands. A tall one with brown hair, a medium one with black hair wearing a small red dress, and a tiny one with yellow pigtails clutching a one-eyed teddy bear. It's us, Ms. Hernandez said, "Draw your family." So I drew our family. Vivian studied the drawing more closely. The tall figure had something purple in his hand, a crude stethoscope drawn with deep crayon strokes. The medium figure wore a tiny crown. The small figure stood between them, arms stretched impossibly wide to hold both their hands. "Why does she have a crown?" Vivian asked softly. "Because Daddy says you're the queen of your castle. But I think queens get lonely in their castles all by themselves. So I drew you with us instead. Queens need families too." Vivian's breath caught painfully in her throat. "And see this?" Rosie pointed toward the corner of the page where two smaller, wispy figures floated among light blue clouds and bright yellow crayon stars. "That's Mommy and Grandma Lorraine. They're watching us from heaven. Ms. Hernandez says, people we love never really leave. They just watch from somewhere we can't see." Callum's eyes instantly filled with tears. "They're smiling because we're happy," Rosie continued, stating it as simple fact. "Mommy wants Daddy to be happy. She told him so. And Grandma Lorraine told him not to be scared. So this drawing is me showing them that he listened." She looked up at both adults with the devastating, pure clarity only children possess. "Because you make Daddy happy, Miss Vivian, and you make me feel safe. And families are the people who make you happy and safe, right?" Callum and Vivian exchanged a long, wordless look. Rosie's face clouded with sudden worry. "Is that okay? To have a new family? Mommy's in heaven and Grandma Lorraine too. But we can still love them and have a new family. Right, Daddy?" Callum knelt immediately, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Yes, baby. We can love Mommy and Grandma forever, and still have room for more. Love isn't like money, Rosie girl. It doesn't run out when you share it." He looked at Vivian over Rosie's head. "They'd want this for us. They'd want us to live." Vivian joined the embrace, kneeling beside them. Three people, arms intertwined, building something new and strong from broken pieces and secondhand hope. That night, after Rosie had finally fallen into a deep sleep, Callum sat alone, holding Karen's wedding ring. For 8 years, he had worn it religiously against his chest, carrying her presence everywhere. A constant weight that served simultaneously as both comfort and chain. He held the simple platinum band in his palm and whispered into the quiet darkness. "Karen, I think I'm ready. I truly hope you understand. I will always love you. You gave me Rosie. You gave me everything good in my life for so long." He wiped the moisture from his eyes. "But Mom was right. I've been hiding in this grief. And there's someone new. She's different. She sees me, really sees me. Not the janitor, not the failed husband who couldn't save you. Just me." He placed the ring carefully into a small wooden box on his dresser. It wasn't throwing it away, and it wasn't forgetting. It was simply making space. "I'm not replacing you, Karen. I'm just making room just like you told me to. That last night you said, 'Don't let me be the end of your story, Cal.' I didn't understand what you meant then." He closed the lid gently. "I understand now. 15 months after a man in duct-taped shoes saved a stranger's life at 30,000 feet, Callum and Vivian boarded another flight together. First class this time, heading to a medical conference in Boston. Vivian had quietly insisted. Callum had protested the extravagance. Rosie had declared definitively, "Let her spoil us, Daddy. That's what families do." Mid-flight, an elderly man in row 3 clutched his chest, sinking down heavily. Callum was out of his plush seat before the flight attendant's call for medical assistance was even finished. Vivian was right behind him, already pulling critical supplies from the specialized overhead medical kit. They worked together, seamlessly synchronized, a perfectly intuitive team forged by crisis and a deep trust in something neither of them had expected to find. Pulse check, aspirin administration, vitals monitoring. Their calm, professional voices cut through the mounting panic of the cabin. The passenger was stabilized. Paramedics were waiting at Logan. A young mother who had watched the entire rapid intervention approached them afterward, her eyes wide with awe. "How do you two do that? You work together like you've been partners forever." Callum smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile that reached his eyes. "Someone believed I was worth saving. She taught me to believe it, too. Vivian took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. And he taught me what real worth means. That it has nothing to do with money and everything to do with who you become when no one is watching. In the busy terminal at Logan Airport, Rosie ran ahead, determined to find the nearest bathroom. Callum and Vivian walked slowly together, their hands almost touching. Vivian stopped him, the noise of the airport fading around them. Your mother made you promise not to be afraid. Are you still afraid, Cal? He took her hand fully. The same calloused, capable hand that had saved her life at 30,000 feet. The same hand that had held his dying wife, his dying mother, and his daughter through night terrors and much more realistic fears about eviction notices. Not anymore. Good. Her voice was barely a whisper, thin with emotion. Because I'm terrified, and I need you to be brave enough for both of us. What scares you? Losing this. Losing you. Losing Rosie. Finding out I don't deserve happiness after spending 42 years not even knowing what it was supposed to feel like. He pulled her closer, dismissing her fear with a certainty he had earned. You deserve everything, Vivian. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me back my life and my purpose. You gave Rosie a family unit. How could you possibly not deserve to be part of what you created? Rosie reappeared moments later, Mr. Patches tucked securely under one arm. Are you guys going to kiss? Because Sophie says when grown-ups hold hands and look at each other like that, they're supposed to kiss. They laughed together, the easy, comfortable sound of it surprising them both. Maybe later, Callum said, leaning down to ruffle her hair. Fine. But can we get dinner first? Like a real family? Because that's what we are now, right? A real family. Callum looked at Vivian. He saw everything terrifying, everything perfect, everything he had stopped believing was possible 8 years ago when he held Karen's hand and felt her slip away. Yeah, Rosie girl. Vivian's voice was thick with palpable emotion. That's exactly what we are. They walked toward baggage claim together, Rosie firmly planted in the middle, holding both their hands, swinging slightly with each step. His mother had told him not to be afraid to live. For 8 years he thought living meant surviving. Getting through each day, keeping Rosie fed, keeping the lights on, keeping his head just above water enough to breathe. But that wasn't living. That was merely existing. Living was letting yourself be seen when you had spent years practicing invisibility. It was accepting help when every fiber of his pride screamed to refuse it. It was believing he deserved good things when the world had spent the better part of a decade teaching him otherwise. Living was looking at a second chance. A terrifying, impossible, staggeringly beautiful second chance, and saying yes. He had said yes in a parking lot in Phoenix. He had said yes every day since. He would keep saying yes for the rest of his life. Yes to Rosie. Yes to Vivian. Yes to the family they were building from broken pieces, borrowed hope, and a boundless love that refused to run out when you shared it. The invisible man had finally allowed himself to be seen.
My flat sings wipers to the sky. Melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note a piece of me, forever here in harmony. My flat sings wipers to the sky. melodies flows gentle and free, carrying dreams across the sea. In every note, a piece of me, forever here in harmony. Music lives inside my heart. Music lives inside my heart.